If you've been watching my main channel, you'll know that I'm building a jointer, and I'm at the point in the project where I've got the motor installed and it's becoming a little bit too bulky just to carry around from place to place. So I figured now is a good time to build the stand that it goes on, and that way I can move it around and work on it without having to lift it up and carry it from different places to get it out of the way. The basic concept for the stand is simple. It's really one leg set on each end of the jointer that attaches directly to the frame of the jointer. And on the one that's on the outfeed, there'll be two wheels. So that all I need to do is lift up the front of the jointer, and then I can wheel it around in the same way that you move a wheelbarrow. And then when I set it back down, it'll be off the wheels and it won't move. So the first step was to come up with a fairly simple design, because I'm not interested in spending my lifetime here building the legs for this. They have to do three things really well. They have to be strong enough to hold up the jointer and not let it move around. They have to accommodate those wheels that I talked about in one end. And it also has to be fairly easy to build and economical. So I'm going to be using the materials I already have. And in this case, it's 1/2-inch plywood. I had half a sheet, and I'm going to cut the legs from that, and most of the other parts actually as well. Now that I've got the parts, well, most of the parts cut, I can start assembly. And the way this is going to go is that I want to fasten in the divider first, which is this big panel, and the shorter one. The shorter one goes on the leg set. It's not really a set, it's just a single leg actually, that takes the wheels, and therefore it's shorter. Whereas the longer one will go on the one that doesn't. And my panel here looks a little long, so I'm going to have to trim that back down again. Anyway, so I'm going to start with this one, which goes all the way to the bottom, except for the part that goes on the bottom, which is underneath these over here. So this is going to go, this will go right on the bottom of this one, and then the panel will go in between, like so. And the idea here is this panel is mostly there for, say, lateral bracing, and this bottom part here is the part that will sit on the floor. Most likely what I'll do is I'll put some rubber pads on here so that it, conforms a little bit to variations in the floor. But I want this panel also to kind of sit inwards a little bit. I don't want it out here on the edge, because that's not the place that it would be strongest. To be strongest kind of centered here like that. So what I'm going to do is I've cut this spacer here, and I'm just going to tack that in place on the edge with a couple of pins, and that'll allow me to put the panel up against that. And to assemble this, of course, I'm going to be using polyurethane construction adhesive, and that's because it is cold here in my shop. I'm just going to put a bead on the edge here if I can get it to come out. And then I can put it in place and drive in the brads from the other side. Now I can pop that spacer off again and do the same on the other side. I'll do is take the other panel over here, temporarily fix that spacer in place again. And then when I take it off again and put it on the right side this time, I can use the other spacer that I made, which is the one that measures down 3 inches from the top. One last thing to do, and that's to put the bottom piece in. That goes in here. And I'm just going to get some glue on the end here, like so. Glue on the end here, and glue on here. So this goes in here, like so. And then I'm going to drive a nail in from the end without my hand being in the way. Very important to keep your hand at a line of fire when you're driving nails. They can go off on a tangent, like me sometimes. And what I may do tomorrow after the glue dries on this, because I have to leave it overnight, is I may put some screws in here. Not very many though, because I think it's going to be strong enough on its own. Like that. Another thing I was going to do was I was thinking about cutting a big hole in the back here to make it look, I don't know, more modern, and modern being a thing from the 1950s, I think. So not modern at all, but I changed my mind on that. I think solid is probably better. Okay, that's the first one down. I'm just gonna slip it in place here. It's backwards and upside down, but you get the idea. Hang on, do it right, John. You're gonna do it right. Except it's still on the top. But you get the idea. Yeah, like that. So, pretty good. And then it'll screw in through the sides here on both sides and really be nice and strong. So all I gotta do is put the other one together, and then we'll be back tomorrow to actually install them on the frame of the jointer itself. It's the next day. Before wrapping up yesterday, I did add some screws on here just to add a little bit of strength, especially to keep the sides of this from spreading apart at the bottom. Well, I'm not too concerned about it. Most of the time, this is just gonna be sitting, and you know, the rare events where you move it, it's not gonna be under a lot of strain anyway. So I've got these wheels that I wanna put in here, and I've cut these blocks that will go beside them as well, and they're gonna fasten like that. And the idea here is that it will normally sit down on this edge here, and then when you lift up on the front of it, it'll come back on this wheel here. So what I have to do is I have to drill a hole here for the axle, which is right here. And I was able to get this from the wheels originally using the same axle by cutting these wheels down a little bit on the hub there. And there's a link to that insane video in the description if you want to go watch that. Anyway, so I've got to drill the axle hole through here. I also have to drill it through here, so I'm going to clamp that on. And I also need to relieve the corner here a little bit so that as you tip the thing up, it'll come down onto the wheel and that won't be in the way. And I really meant to do that before I assemble this, but it's not a big deal just to lop that off with the circular saw right now, even before I drill the hole. All right, so I got to cut and I got to put in place here with the one on the inside. I haven't glued anything up yet, but what I want to do now is I want to tighten this so that the bolt on this side actually presses into the wood. This is kind of keyed in here with a little piece of metal that'll press into the wood and keep it from turning. Just want to make sure it's in there all the way before I position this other side. Okay, that pushed it all the way in. I'll also put a little bit of glue on there after, but I don't think that's much of a big deal because I don't see that ever coming loose. I'm just gonna undo this nut right now and take it off, and then I can get some glue on the edge of the piece of plywood here to fasten it in place like that, and then put it back. And this time when I put it on, I'm just gonna snug it up, and I've already put a little bit of glue so that it won't undo. Kind of a redneck Loctite, I guess you could say. Now I'm just gonna finger tighten this just to keep the wheel in place there, nice and snug. Not worried about clearance here. That doesn't have to be a super smooth rolling thing. It's just for minor movements. And I'm just gonna fire a couple of nails up from underneath here to hold this one in place. I can do this. And then I'll just slack off that nut a little bit so that the wheel turns fairly freely. That'll loosen up. That's not a big deal. Yeah. it's going to be beautiful. And now all I need to do is the same thing on the other side in exactly the same way. And then I can put both of them on the jointer frame itself. Not strictly necessary, but certainly won't hurt at this point. I'm going to add gussets in the corners here. And I'm just going to glue those in and then fire in a couple of brads just to hold them in place. The glue will be all the fastening that these things need. And what these will do is, if the thing should happen to go this way, see, the 1/2-inch plywood can potentially bend, and I don't want it to pull this one up. So this just adds a little bit of strength that way, and it also adds a lot of strength the other way as well. Oh, this is friggin' heavy. Okay, I decided to put the thing on its side here, oriented this way, and I've got the leg set that has the wheels in place, and I need to cut out for the motor opening here on the thing. So I'm just going to notch that off, and I've got the same thing on the other side, so I'll do that now before I install them. So the corner's knocked off, out of the way. I'm going to push it into position here on the thing, and just to temporarily hold it in place, I could use a clamp, but I've got my pin nailer here, and that's perfect for that. People will say, well, what would you need a pin nailer for? Well, I can't do without one, to be honest. So, got myself in all kinds of positions here holding this, and just a couple of pins will keep that where it's supposed to be until I can get some nails in, or some screws in, I mean. And the beauty of the pins is they're not permanent. I mean, they're easy enough to take out. And if you've messed up driving this one in over here, you can easily move it to straighten it up again. So I'm just gonna drill out the countersinks for these. I'm gonna put 3 screws in, and I'm not using any glue on this at all. I wanna be able to take this all apart, especially before I finish it, just in case I need to change something. Okay, that side done, I can flip it over and attach the other side, and then I think I'm probably gonna get it down on the floor to put the other end on, because this is not as convenient as I thought it would be. Okay, now I can fasten the other side. All right, both legs solidly attached. Let's try it out and see how it works. It would work better if I didn't have junk on the floor. But yeah, this is fit exactly. My one wheel is sticking just a little bit, but that'll loosen up over time. I'm not going to worry about that. Okay, I'm happy with that. You might be thinking this looks a little bit low, but I did this on purpose, mainly because what I want to end up here with the fence attached to this is for it not to be higher than the top of my table saw, because here in my small shop, I don't have very many places to put a big machine like this, so it's going to have to basically be right beside the table saw, either on this side or on that side over there. Probably on this side, but I'll have a little bit more space here because I'll move the table saw over that way a bit more. And I can't have anything in the way when I want to cut something wide.